Hi, I'm Barbara O'Brien, and welcome to The Empathetic Trainer. Today's guest is Tiffany Stauffer from Grace and Grit Horsemanship, Wilson, Wisconsin. Thanks, Tiffany, for coming today. We appreciate you making the trip down to the farm on this rainy day, but we're glad to have you.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to come out and seeing the colors change in the trees. It's a pretty drive out here. You have a beautiful place.
That's the nice thing about Wisconsin is that at least the seasons change,
Yes.
right? A couple months we'll be complaining about the weather, but
Oh, exactly.
this is a great time of year. Great time of
Yes.
year. Well, anyway, I'm really glad to have you come, and we want to just talk about your kind of like how it started, your love affair with horses. It's obvious you have a love affair with horses,
Yes.
and I think you've had a pretty interesting journey because you're a young person, and I think that's wonderful. But already in your young life, you've a lot of accomplishments already, so I'm pretty impressed by that. But I I knew you when you were a child because I know your
hmm
mom, and you always had a knack, a special gift with horses. That was evident when you were like 6, 7, 8 years old. Your ponies really liked you, and that was really cool to watch. And so, why don't we start way back there? Want to tell me about like, were you born like this, or did a realization that you loved horses? How did that even come about?
I mean, I think I was pretty much in love with horses from day one. I mean, they used to joke they would sit me up on the horse before I could ever stand or anything, and they would take me off and I would start screaming. I mean, I was infatuated. I would just sit there and play with their mane. And so it was, I mean, very much from day one. And I was lucky enough. I did grow up on a small hobby farm, so I've never known a life without horses. So that's been pretty special. And hey, he likes to eat my shirt.
Yeah, the kittens are like that.
Yes.
Iris and Marigold are joining us today, so
They're
we're just
super friendly and
until
very
they get
cute.
until they get to be too much trouble, we'll have some kittens because they really just want to be here.
Yes.
So
So that's kind of how I got started. And my mom was definitely the horseman and took on some training horses and like that. So I was had the opportunity of learning kind of the training aspect of it pretty soon. But there's nothing I enjoyed more in life than just getting to spend time with my horses. And looking back now, I think it's because it let me be very present and in the moment and not worrying about all of the other things that were going on. Um, so that was something very special. I could get on my pony, and there was a route I was allowed to take away from home by myself.
mhm.
And so just to get on and like get on him and just go escape the rest of the world. So that was very much my therapy in a lot of ways. And so I had the opportunity growing up to continue that, and then yeah, I got to start showing very young and
Okay, so when
was
you started, I want to go back to being a child,
yep.
right? And every horse girl every horse person can relate to that. Um, when you say being present, which is a lot of self-awareness for a child if you think about it. Like every other family, there's always stuff,
hmm
and growing up, there's always stuff, right? And so a lot of times, people when they go out to be with their horse, they're bringing all that stuff with them,
hmm
right? And that can be good in a way that at least if you're honest with your horse, I'm feeling this today, like I
Yes.
talked to mine, but that took a while to get to that point. Most of the time, it was let's just stuff that down and try to be not with it. But it sounds like at an early age, you learn to let things flow through you and be present with the horse. Like let not bring it or not hide it. Does that make
Yeah.
any sense? Like you weren't.
It's like they would melt away, is what. So it's like
Yeah,
whether
that's what
that's
I'm trying to
working
get
through the
to.
emotion, I would, and there were a lot of days I would just go out and cry with my horse. So it's not that I didn't bring it. There were
That's what I
definitely
mean.
days where I would just go and like process things with them and sit with them and like just hang out with them.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
exactly
by
what
the
I
time
meant.
I did get on and go somewhere or we went out and did something, I didn't have to worry about that stuff anymore.
So at an early age, how old are you about when you're thinking about like this was
Oh,
aware?
I was probably maybe 6 or 7 by the time I was able to kind of go out by myself.
Right. So at an early age, you learned how to be what's really important with horses, present, and you learned the healing value of horses.
Yes. I
So
mean, and that's one reason I really stick with, and I would love to have some sort of a therapeutic center down the road, is because I think horses are very healing, and I would like to share that with other people to some capacity.
I,
Because I think a lot of people don't understand how therapeutic they really are in a lot of ways. So that's and I'm sure other animals are the same way, but my horses are my passion for sure.
absolutely. So how old were you when you started showing?
Oh, probably 4 or 5.
Wow. Okay.
So it was pretty young, and I had a little pony at the time. I always joke he taught me how to fall before he taught me how to ride. Um, there were a couple horses I rode before him, so I grew up riding on Duke, who's an old like 30-year-old, been there, done that kind of horse, and then I had another one named Chip, who was my dad's old horse. So by the time I started riding him, probably in his 30s as well. And then when I was 2, they bought me a 2-year-old Welsh pony. And so, 2 and 2, there's the
Black and blue.
exactly, yes. But and looking back now, it's probably not the safest thing and might be frowned upon. But it taught me a lot. So when I started showing, it was primarily with him, and then I did graduate to some horses. I think I was probably closer to around 8 before I got an actual horse that I
Mhm.
started showing. So started at the local stuff, started with the local saddle clubs and 4-H
And what
and
discipline were you showing in early on?
everything. So started out with like the timed event kind of games stuff, did some Western pleasure.
Okay, so just for our audience that may not be familiar with
Yep.
these different disciplines, if you could just briefly describe, a timed event versus a pleasure class, and Western, like what gear are we using, Western saddles, just
Yes.
kind of keeping in mind that
So
some of our listeners may not be familiar.
yeah, within the pleasure shows or classes, there's usually showmanship, which is an in-hand class where we, run next to the horse on the ground, and then your Western and English pleasure classes are primarily judged, and focusing on the cadence, the correctness, all of that within the gaits that you need to be riding, and then there's also some pattern classes, so how well you can execute a pattern on your horse in both English or Western attire. And then the timed event stuff is more like your rodeos. So we had the barrel racing, and then there was several other patterns that were also timed, and so it was just running against a clock as opposed to competing underneath a judge.
I think I remember you barrel racing really young.
Yes, yes. And then I did some reining, and then I got into rodeo, and I did that for a while, and then got into the breed show stuff and did some hunter jumpers and
And what was the breed of horse that you were working with at that point?
primarily quarter horses at the time.
Mhm.
So I did start out with my pony, and then went to quarter horses and have stuck with them up until, I mean, primarily up until recently. And then I
Mhm.
started diving into some other breeds.
Yeah, some of the Iberian breeds.
Yes.
So that was he an Andalusian? I'm trying to
Yep.
remember.
He was an
Yeah,
Andalusian.
yeah. Okay, well, that's cool. So, did you find it hard to keep up with everything, or was this a passion and it didn't like, I'm going to go do my schoolwork and then I'm going to go outside and do our chores because there's always chores with horses. And then I'm going to ride and get better and better because you were really competitive and really quite
Yes.
talented. You still are, but I mean, as a child, you were getting to pretty high levels in the national, show world, very competitive.
Hmm.
Um, you always struck me as a young person that just put in the work.
I did. And so it was a lot of work. And my brother wasn't nearly as much into the showing. And so when I was 10, my parents had divorced. And so it was primarily my mom, taking my brother and I. And, she couldn't support my brother doing it. But, for her being, doing it with just one parent, she couldn't just leave my brother. So she's like, well, your brother has to come with. And so I would have to pack his stuff, get his horse bait. It's like, so not only
Because
was
he's a
I doing mine.
younger brother. He needed a
Yes.
little help. Yeah.
Yep, and he wasn't as into it. So it wasn't his thing, and he didn't really want to put the time and effort into it. So, the stipulation was if I wanted to go, I also had to help get him there because it had to be a family thing. So it wasn't just me. So it was, yeah, a lot more work. And I was more than happy to do it day in and day out, anything horse related. Luckily, I went to a small school, and school came relatively easy. So there wasn't much of a time commitment there.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would breeze through school and just want to spend time with the horses.
For sure.
So
We should be fair to your brother to say that you two are really close and that he's a big help
yes,
now, and
yes. Now he's definitely helped me a ton.
and he likes horses still,
Yes,
and because of
yes,
course I know him, he's a great guy. So
yes. He does not. He doesn't have horses, so he didn't kind of follow. He didn't have the same passion for the horse.
yeah, and that's
Um,
understandable. He's
but yeah, he does. He comes and helps me a lot with my guys and kind of the more marketing side, and does a ton of pictures for me.
yeah,
And
beautiful
he's
photographer.
definitely, yeah, more of the artsy minded, which and very passionate as well.
Yeah,
Just not in the
great.
same thing that I was.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm close to my siblings too, and it's really a blessing to have, family work with you and help you out. And who can you
Yes.
trust more? So, okay.
What is she playing
What do you
there?
want me to do about these two? What are they doing? Come here. Naughty. We should get a better behaved cat.
You might need a different species.
Some cat trainer, So everything echoes on this floor. Okay. That was pretty interesting. You graduate from high school. You've been showing on the national level. I remember you going to the world.
Yes.
Was it in Palomino or?
Yep.
Okay, so you went to the world that's extremely competitive, like we were talking about. If you graduate from high school, what does Tiffany do next?
So I was training quite a few horses my senior year and got a little burnt out doing it. So my mom had some health problems, and so I kind of stepped up and was training lots.
Mhm.
And I lost the enjoyment in it. So
Ah.
I had decided in middle school, I knew that horses were a big part of my life and they're expensive, and I knew that. So I was like, well, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to make a lot of money and build my horse facility. And then, when I retire, I'll be able to have a therapeutic center because I'll have made enough money to sustain that.
Wow. Okay, let me stop right there. You're like 17, 18 years old. I'm going to go to college and get a degree in engineering.
Yes.
Not a mean feat. I mean, this is, it was pretty amazing. So that I can have a good living, so I can do my passion.
Yes.
What a practical mindset. I mean, that's cool. So for this long-term goal of a therapeutic, which I truly believe you're going to get to.
Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely will. I still have a lot
So
of life left.
what happened? I mean, yeah, that's very ambitious for,
Yeah.
of course, now you've always been a driven kid, so that's cool. But was it a little bit scary to like think about, going to school and putting this kind of pressure on
I
yourself?
think I was ready for a change. So I ended up, at 17, moved out to Golden, Colorado, which is on the west side of Denver.
So from Wisconsin to Colorado,
Yes.
how many miles is that? 15?
About 950, so almost 1,000 miles. So I
Right.
moved almost 1,000 miles away. I knew nobody out there.
I was going to say, did you know anybody out there?
Nope. I moved out. My mom had given me a trailer to take with the idea of selling it once I moved. So I took my truck and my horse and moved out there at 17, and had to board and did the school thing, and it didn't last very long. And I think I was a couple months in, and I went to buy a horse to train and sell. So I couldn't just have one horse out there because I was like, I'm just going to back off the horse thing, and it didn't last.
So you had this thing in your mind. I have to grow up, be responsible.
Yep.
Do these grown-up things, and at least you had to have the one horse. You weren't horseless because you would die.
Yes.
Because I went through that myself, so I understand that. But then you were like, okay, I'm just going to focus on my school, but it wasn't enough.
No. So I went and, because a lot of times I would buy cheaper horses that didn't know a whole lot and give them an education, make them into something really nice, and then sell them. And so I made a lot of money doing that. So I did that. I started doing that through school, which I was never a fantastic student. But I did enough to get by. So I went to Colorado School of Mines, and I did end up getting my degree in petroleum engineering.
Wow.
All while flipping horses. And towards the end, it became, boarding horses costed a lot, especially when I was keeping, 5 at a, in any given time. That was a lot to board.
It's hard to make a profit if you don't have your own facility.
Yes.
And you're boarding because, you're just getting your trainer part of it. It's hard to make a profit at all. Anyway, start there.
It is. But it is hard to make a profit in the horse industry. So yeah, I had done that and then moved up. I moved a couple different places, and there's a lot of stories within that. But then I found this facility I was able to kind of manage and keep my horses at cost.
Oh wow! And this was in Colorado.
Yep.
Okay, are you in the mountains then?
Right in the foothills. So beautiful, beautiful. I mean, landscape. It was.
In
gorgeous.
What year of college were you at this point?
By the time I started kind of managing them, that was, I think, my 4th or 5th year.
Okay.
By the time I met them. So my first year I had to be in the dorms because that is a requirement. And then my second year, my mom had bought a condo somewhat close to the school. So I lived there for a year. And then I managed a facility my 3rd year, and then switched facilities my 4th and 5th year. So yeah, doing horses the entire time, and got into it. And so got a job so I got my degree in petroleum engineering, and then got a job as a transmission line engineer.
Wow.
and worked for almost 2 years. And it was during the pandemic. So we were working from home, remote, and I was living in a barn apartment at the time.
Sure.
So I could hear people coming all day and getting their horses out and doing things. Like I could hear them
And you're
because they
stuck
were
at the
underneath me.
computer. Yeah.
And I'm on the computer trying to work. And I wasn't miserable, but I was very close to it. It's just, it was constant. It would make me really frustrated that other people got to do stuff like that and be out with their horse during the day. And it used to really aggravate me that I wasn't able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people I was living with at the time have definitely become some mentors to me at this point. And she always, from the moment I met them, was like, "You're at some point gonna train horses." Like she knew long before I was like, "I'm gonna be an engineer," because that was before I actually got a
An
job.
engineer can make a pretty good living.
Yes.
So it's a practical.
It was, and I'm a very methodical thing. It's like I want things engineered on paper. I want black and white, very logical approach to things. And so they really were the ones that kind of pushed me, and when I had the opportunity to leave and train horses, I was able to do that.
Was it scary to step away from a solid income?
Yes, that was, the place that I'm at now is one of those things that was definitely meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
It was super scary leaving a regular job and getting approved and having this huge mortgage for a big horse facility.
So you bought a horse facility. How old are you when you bought a horse facility?
Well, see, I'm 25 now and I've had it for 2 years, so 23.
Okay, so this is the facility you're currently in.
Yes.
So you moved back to Wisconsin.
Yep.
Not too far from your hometown.
Correct, because I could not
Sorry,
afford...
the cat's chewing on the mic. We'll have to...
I could not afford any sort of horse facility out in Colorado. I mean, the prices out there were insane.
Yeah.
And so I had been looking for something that I could train out of for a while. And the people I was working for, I was a great company. Like I definitely nothing against them. I think they were fantastic, but they had known that I was looking for something that I could train horses out of. And I just couldn't find anything that I could even get approved for out west. And my friend jokingly sent me this property in Wisconsin. She's like, "Haha, too bad it's in Wisconsin." Because I had said I never wanted to move back. And so, yeah, I flew out, and it happened to be 7 minutes from my dad's house, which is not where he was living when I grew up here.
Right.
And so I was like, well, if anything, I'll check it out and see and visit him.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. I ended up, putting an offer in, working things out. There were a lot of pieces in the meantime that had to kind of go together in order to make it happen.
Well, the banker must have been pretty impressed for you, 24 years old.
My company vouched for me that I still had a job. That was another thing too. They knew I was leaving, but at the time the mortgage lender called them.
Shh, don't say.
So,
Obviously you've been making your payments.
Yes. I always joke. It's like, well, how are you doing? I'm like, well, I haven't missed a mortgage payment yet. I still have everything, but it was scary, and definitely had to put the work in to kind of maintain that.
This is where your brother came in a
Yes.
lot. I mean, I remember reading the posts out, the help.
Yes, he came up quite a bit and so he actually had been, I think he was in between jobs for a little bit when I had moved too, so he had a little bit more time and was super helpful, came up and helping, he'd show up on a weekend and he'd be like, "What do you want done this weekend?" And so that was fantastic. And
that's the best.
My dad was working a job that was pretty remote at the time as well, so I had tons of help getting the place.
Oh, and it's a big facility, and there was a lot to do, and it did need some repair. And I remember that,
Yes.
at every horse facility, everywhere always needs something.
Yes.
Well, that's pretty cool. All right, so you move back to Wisconsin, and you have a horse facility, and so then you just start boarding and training. Is that the idea?
Yeah, so I pretty much took training horses on from the start because I needed some kind of income. And then started boarding horses because I also think it's kind of good to have some commotion around for training horses.
Other activities so horses
Yes.
can be used to things.
Other people and kids and, running around the barn and other horses loping in the arena and lots of different kind of stimulus almost. Because at the time I was getting a lot of colts and a lot of mustangs and more reactive horses, so it was good to when I'm working horses almost all day, I can choose when to work them, so I can work them when people aren't there, or when they're ready for it I can work them when people are there. So yeah, I started boarding and doing that. I actually started doing clinics. That was actually before I started looking for my own facility out in Colorado.
Yeah.
So there was that. So I had actually already been doing clinics before I moved.
Well, let's talk about the clinics because you have a unique offering, and there's been even in your lifetime, there's been a huge shift, or at least a movement towards a much more empathetic, understanding, caring approach to horses as to what they're thinking and feeling and how they're made, how their brains work, how their nervous system works. There's been a movement of trying to understand that better and be more in tune with that. Now,
Yes.
remember watching you, you had that all along, and I don't think we would have labeled it at that point. It was just kind of something that was in you, and it's pretty cool. Kittens being kittens. So what you're offering is, at least for most of the clinics that I've seen, is something called Liberty, where
Mhm.
we're working with the horses at Liberty. And so if you want to explain to our audience what that means and how that's kind of a whole different way of approaching training, where the horse really is consenting and wanting to be with you and doing these fun things versus other methods where there was much more negative pressure and being constantly wanting to have released from a terrible negative pressure, not just normal pressure where of course you're going to get a release. Please move
Yes.
over. Thank you. That sort of thing. But we're much more in harsher bits, bigger spurs, all these kind of communication that is much more not as, in my head, not as fair because
Yeah.
they're not having a chance to think about what you're asking.
Yep.
You have a whole different approach along the lines of horse people that I'm trying to learn from and admire. Warwick Schiller and like Mary Corning, who was a guest, and Carrie Lake, who was a guest, and you have others that we're going to have you talk about because you get to go to a pretty exciting clinic coming up, and I want to talk about that because you keep learning
Mhm.
all the time. You get better because you keep learning. But I'll take a breath here. I'm so excited about your clinics. Why don't you explain to our audience what that is?
So yeah, there's a million ways to skin a cat. So there's a lot of different approaches to liberty itself. But in general, the goal to me for liberty is to have a horse that's mentally engaged and so in tune with you that they're really reading off of more subtle cues. So a lot of times it's like, yeah, if we do up the bit or various things, a lot of times the horse can get a little bit more inside themselves and a little bit more shut down about what we're doing and get a little more monotonous and just kind of obedient.
Mhm.
Whereas I really, really want to prioritize the horse's kind of mental aspect of it and get them responding to me in a much more subtle way. So a lot of times, depending on what kind of relationship the person has with the horse and what their goals are, we will actually start on a line and just kind of start getting that communication down and reinforcing. So, like a lot of I do use a lot of whips, and they're not necessarily to whip the horse,
No, of course not.
but
And please,
my
please clarify that because the word whip is a word that can bother some people that don't understand that it's purely a communication tool,
yes,
and you're never hitting the horses with whips. I mean, let's just get that right out. There's
yeah.
there's no abuse going on here.
No, it's to clarify. So I'm only, and so I heard it mentioned at one point that as people we're very vertical, and our space is vertical, whereas a horse's space is horizontal.
The way their eyes are on their head, literally, and the
Yes,
way their brain works.
yes. So by having a whip, I can extend my body to be a little bit more of a horizontal kind of being. So now I can, because like horses can use their heads, they can use their back ends, whatever. I can still clarify, whether that's moving sideways or moving forward with a whip, and just kind of touch them where I need to. Whereas if I'm standing here, I can't necessarily be as clear about my communication or what I want.
It's an extension of your arm. It
Yes.
just makes your arm that much longer so you can lightly catch their attention by moving it,
Hmm.
or if you need to brush them lightly with it.
Yes.
And the horse can feel a fly.
Yes.
So it doesn't need to be any force in that sense.
No.
When you were helping me with my young horses, which has transformed, I've already been working on relationship for some time, but having clear communication is what I was lacking.
Yes.
The poor horses didn't understand what I was asking. I'm just starting to learn more and more about attunement and getting in touch. I call them my Montana mares. They came from Westwind Morgans out in Sheridan, Montana, and they're raised in a big, big herd, and so they understand horse body language really well. They also, one of them was more concerned about being able to see all around her because when she was in a big herd in the big open sky of Montana, she could worry about coyotes and things, or I don't know what would worry her, but she would worry. And so when I found I'd bring her to enclosed spaces like a barn, she had a lot of anxiety. So I've been able to work through that based on what I've been learning, and she's come around. But I still wasn't able to until you came over and helped me. I get her to understand where I want her to walk and where I want her to be in position to me, and have her trust that it's going to be okay. And so when you have a horse that has a lot of anxiety, and she, you know, first of all, you can't just walk up to them with a whip in your hand and grab on their lead and just, be like somebody walking you up on the street and grabbing you and go, do this. He'd be a little concerned. And so if you could explain your approach to how you helped me with her, and she's still on a lead line, but how that translates into the Liberty clinics, which I'm going to come to one for sure when I get her trailer loading, which is own. But if you can kind of remember that experience when we were working with Rita, specifically the one that was more anxious about human contact.
Yep. So, a lot of times too, it's like, so she likes to be a lot more forward too. And that can intimidate people. And I would rather let the horse move and kind of get those feelings out. Um, but just be able to control the direction. So it's like we worked a lot on sending her each way and kind of using our body language to point in a direction and get her to go out. And then we did work a lot on stopping and kind of backing out of your space too. So it's like we want to have, we got to build a communication somewhere. And so getting her to start following your cues and your body language and sending and controlling all of the direction kind of helps build the blocks for what the Liberty stuff does later. And then we changed a little bit because she had a lot of draw. So she likes to be really close to you. And so when we talk about Liberty, we have to balance draw versus drive.
Right, because draw means that she can run me over.
Yes.
Not be aware of where her body is, or not caring where her body is in relationship to me.
Yes.
And if I back up, that's an invitation to come in.
Exactly.
And so that's what, to a horse, it makes sense. If I go towards her, that's an invitation, when we're at least being dynamic, when we're moving, that's an invitation to move. And being that I've had some scary experiences with some, even more anxious horses before I knew better and had gotten hurt, my instinct is to back up, like, okay, fine.
And then, a lot of times the backup, and they actually get closer. So if we're wanting to send them away and build some space between us, we have to be able to balance both of them. So, she might be one that has more draw and wants to kind of crawl in your lap and be like, take care of me, or look to you for different things. They just have to learn a respect around it. But
respect in a good way, because not in the sense of I'm going to never interact. I think it's important that they're able to interact with their muzzle, with their, but it has to be like this, we're doing this together. Yes. And you're not knocking me down.
Yes.
That draw versus drive is really
holding the like your reinforcement, whether it's praise, you're petting them, whatever. You don't withhold that, but you kind of build your boundary. And so with her, we've been working a lot more on the drive side of things. Is, hey, you're okay out there on your own, and you need to kind of find a little bit of your own confidence. I'm right here. I'm not, super far away. And then as her drive gets better and you can send her out, then we start balancing and bringing back in the draw. And so being able to balance them is what's going to give you your ability to leave your horse off of the lead rope. And if we add draw, they come back in. If we add drive, they can go back out, but still stay mentally connected. So there's a lot of buttons that you kind of have to put in place so that the horse understands what you're asking. So like for you, we were working on driving. Mm-hmm. And so we can have the whip that just helps push her out a little bit so we can kind of show her what we want. We can also, when we're working on the draw, it's the exact same thing. That halter and lead rope can kind of show them or clarify what I'm asking. And my whip will start being the cue. So I can start cueing with that whip, and then I can show them what I want with the halter and lead rope.
Exactly. Well, I want to stress, knowing you and working with you, something that happened when we were working together. And it was such a learning moment for me, such a profound moment, because I was asking her to back up and I was not talking. Okay. And I'm moving I have her hand like this. If you're familiar with horses, I'm holding right a few inches underneath the shank of the lead rope, so underneath her chin. And I'm kind of in front of her a little bit, and I'm asking her to go back, but I'm swinging the rope kind of ferociously, kind of like, rah, 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 rah. I'm not even saying, and she said, you said to me so quietly, so gently, no, you're shouting. Now, I wasn't saying a word, but to the horse, it was so much more energy that needed to be at that moment. It was confusing to her. I could have been softer and asked her softer because I wanted her to respond softly. I don't want her to be overreactive and get worried. But the way I was going at it was like not giving her a chance to process the question that I'm asking, which is please back up.
Yes.
And I love that you said, no, you're shouting at her. And you were so quiet about it, so I didn't feel like terrible. And I took a deep breath and you said, all you need to do is just, move it. She feels everything you're doing, every piece of body language. She feels it. So you're going to be as quiet as possible with your cues. And it was kind of a revelation because growing up, it was a lot of, yeah,
Yeah.
and not that we were being horribly mean, but we certainly weren't learning how to be in tune.
And soft. And that's the biggest mistake I see a lot of people make is they get in there and they're ask I say you're asking too much or your ask is too big.
Your
Because
ask
they
is
go
too
in
big.
there
Mhm.
with a lot of pressure, but they never gave the horse the opportunity to respond to the soft ask. So my goal when I work with them is I want everything to be smaller and more in tune and less of an ask so my horses can do things with almost an invisible cue to someone who's watching.
It is amazing.
So that's the goal. But if you're always asking big, or like if you go to, you're riding your horse and you pick up on your reins every time, how do you ever expect them to ride off of your seat? It's like you always have to, and I'll clarify with my reins, if I'm working on a stop in particular, I'll sit deep. That's the response I want them to, or the cue that I want them to
Mhm.
respond
And
to.
sit deep means to push your seat bones down into the saddle because they feel that
Yes.
on their back.
And
And that
lean back
helps.
a little bit, like tilt your pelvis back.
Yeah. So for the non-riders, just to understand what we mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
So your cue can be so subtle as tilting your pelvis back and breathing out. And then, yeah, if they don't understand that, usually we halter break them before. So you can just pick up on your halter and say, hey, this is what I wanted, and show them what you want. It's not until if they're completely not paying attention, then it's like, yeah, we can go for a little bit bigger ask or, like you were waving it a little bit more firm. A lot of it comes into energy. And horses pick up on body language and energy a lot quicker than most people do. People aren't even aware of how big they're asking their horse to do things.
Or not enough, one or the other.
Yes.
Or yeah. So asking or teaching them what response we're looking for by shaping that behavior,
Hmm.
then we can ask yes questions instead of always asking something they don't understand.
Yes, and it has to be within reason. You can't just expect a horse to know how to do everything.
Of course not.
But
Yeah.
you can, asking a yes question as long as what they're trying to figure out is within reason for what they can figure out. Sometimes there is a little bit of they're gonna have to think through it, or
Mhm.
like Rita in
Or break it down
particular,
in little
you could
steps.
see her thinking.
Hmm.
She wasn't always giving the right answer, but she would be trying different things and be like, "Is this what you want?" And instead of reprimanding her when it was a no, you just keep asking and keep trying to clarify
And
until they
then
do understand.
yeah, and being Morgans, they love to please as a breed. They're just like the border collies of the world, of the horse world. Of course, I'm a little biased,
Yeah.
but they love that interaction. They love that uh, you know being able to do it right and then go like good job, and you can just see them, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about doing the initial groundwork, call it, in the training. I wanted to tell you a quick little anecdote because you've been out twice to help me. I'm so excited when you come because with those three youngsters, we've made by you showing me what to do and me finally having it sink in, I'm able to work with them a little bit. So the other day I worked with all three, and I had Rita, the one that was more anxious. I was working with her, and there were a few of the older mares in the paddock. I had taken the two hooligans, my 2-year-olds, and they're in a separate paddock, but right next to each other. So she could see them, but they weren't in there. Otherwise, all three are on top of me all the time. So I was working with Rita, and we had this little session working on the things of drive and draw and making a quiet circle around me. Mostly we worked on her staying regulated, which means her staying in a calm state of mind, not being anxious. And it was working great. I thought, this is wonderful. I was really thinking about being present with her, like staying with her and not thinking about anything else, just like enjoying the moment being with her. So I took her halter off, and I'm like, we're all done. You can go. And for the next 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes, she's like, I really liked the game. And I didn't have treats. I wasn't working with treats. I was just working with, scratches and praise and things she really likes. She, at Liberty on her own, now not as sophisticated as what you can do, but at Liberty, she was like, I like the game. I'm going to stay with you. So I would walk, and she was right by my side, and I would stop,
Aw.
and she would stop. And I'd say, well, clever, you. And then I would turn into her shoulder. And so she had to turn into herself and not walk on me. And she was like, I can do that. And then pretty soon I went like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. So I kind of took my arm and said, go over here. And she followed my arm and went, and then she followed my arm back, just an extension of like what the lead rope would be doing.
Yep.
Right. And it was, for me, it was magical. I almost cried. I mean, that sounds so crazy, but it was like, she was like, I'm with you. Let's play the game.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I can wear this out. I'm going to stop while we're having a lot of fun and just, not pressure, not do anything.
Yep.
And I just, petted her and told her how clever she was. And she was very proud of herself. And the two hooligans are like in the other paddock, play with me, play with me. That would be Tess and Tatum. And it was one of the most gratifying experiences I've had with my horses since my old horse passed away, who I was really connected to, and gave me so much hope with Rita that we're going to continue to build this relationship. She's just 4. We haven't backed her yet. That's going to back means ride her. It's going to be a slow, careful process, but by going slow, we're actually going fast, because I'm going to hopefully fill those gaps, make sure that she understands all the time what's being asked, so that her stress level doesn't have to go up and I won't get hurt.
Yes.
And I appreciate your helping me with that journey. And so your clinics are where people can come, and how many people are in a clinic?
Usually I limit to 8.
So they can really get attention and focused on you. They can come to you in Wilson, Wisconsin, but the best part is that you travel.
I do.
So anyone listening to our podcast, she's got her passport, she's ready to go to Europe, but certainly in the United States, you can get a facility, you can put on a clinic, and your clinics are always full.
Yes.
People are always coming to you. So you help these people with what in the clinic?
So a lot of times it's being able to connect mentally. So watching, where the horse's attention is. Do we have an ear? Are they soft? Is there a little bit of a bend to the person? What are they looking at? So really being able to kind of refocus on the horse is what we work on in the mornings. So it's a lot of that,
And the horses are on halters at this point. Most of them.
Most of them, I would say in general, we get them off the first day, if not the second day.
How do the horses not just leave and go run off to smell other horses? That's
So I mean, there's a whole method to the process, but it's like, if we'll usually start in a smaller area, like a round pen. And so like you were doing with Rita, you send her out one direction. So if I'm trying to do some liberty work and asking them to stay drawn in on a circle around me, I'll control, if everything else fails and they leave, I'm going to control the direction first. So you're sending circles when you can send Rita out either direction. That's where we would start. And then I would try to get in front of her eye. So when you send, you're kind of behind the drive line and driving her away.
The drive line for those that don't know is a point behind their shoulder.
Yes. Yeah. So it's kind of like at their withers. So if I'm walking at a horse,
and the withers is the shoulder, top of the shoulder. Just so
yes. Yeah. So it's like if my intention is kind of big and I'm walking towards them, I'm saying, hey, can you kind of move out of my space? I'm trying to push them out and around. So getting them to send on a circle around me. And then once I can control the direction, I will kind of just step in front of their eye a little bit and try to catch their attention. And then I'm going to draw backwards. So instead of walking into them, I'll just catch their attention, wait for an ear to flick, an eye to come in, a little bit of a softness bend in the body. And then I'm going to back away. And when they see that and kind of want to connect or step in a couple steps, that's what I start rewarding.
Okay.
So it's
and the backing away is an invitation to come in.
Yes. So that's your draw. So walking into them is driving away. Backing up is going to be drawing.
Okay. Are you using treats at this point?
No.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, I understand the trick training or treat training, and it works. It's a whole nother podcast with a whole nother thing.
Yes, and it's a whole different ball game, and there's a lot of like treat receiving that you would have to teach beforehand, and learning the clicks so they know what it means, and so we definitely don't dive in. And I can't say I'm a huge advocate for treats. I think to me it's another tool in the toolbox, but it's not an end all be all. And I really like to kind of have that communication, the foundation of communication without the food, because I've actually seen that sometimes it can create a little bit more anxiety.
Oh, exactly, because now they're not trying to shape a behavior; it's just a seeking behavior.
Yes,
like
now
where is the treat on your body, and
a lot of people can't handle that.
Yeah,
because now we have a lot more to shape.
And Morgans are really, really food motivated. I mean, just like really, really, really. And I find that that their brain kind of. I mean, I use I'm an animal actor trainer. I train animal actors. So, of course, we use positive reinforcement and treats with dogs and cats and chickens and anything else for training. The food's very important.
Yep.
Because that's how we can shape a behavior quickly and make it really, really fun. But with horses, I can do the same concept because I can teach what when you are shaping to get a treat, they have a sound, whether it's good or a buzzer or whatever, a clicker, they know that means a treat's coming. You can use that to shape behavior, but it does take time. And I find that at least with my Morgans, they forget all about anything else except smelling and focusing on the treat. And it would take a lot more time to get them to work quietly and consistently without being seeking where they, want to keep reaching for wherever my bag is, or, and that's a whole thing. And there's people who do it very successfully,
Yes.
no doubt. But I find that mine seem equally happy with the praise.
Well, and that's, yeah, you don't necessarily need, it's that connection part,
Mhm.
the food can sometimes create a false connection if they're just there for the food. And so I really like to kind of focus on the communication part. And, positive reinforcement can be praise and petting them and scratching them on their chest where they get some fly bites or behind their ears. Like
Exactly.
every horse is different, and that can absolutely be a form of praise. Like it doesn't have to be food.
No.
But
Well, at
it,
Liberty, obviously, they're choosing to be with you.
yes.
I mean, it's pretty black and white because they can walk away,
Yeah.
and choose not to be with you. And I don't see you as the kind of person that's forcing that. Like, no, you get back over here. I'm going to beat you up. I mean, that's obviously not going to work. I see them when I was watching you do your Liberty work with your horse when you came over. You will see some of this footage. She wants to come play the game. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like they are clever herd animals that want to play the game and be with in tune. And this lucky horses choose to do that.
Yes.
So some horses may take longer than others.
Absolutely.
Some truly, just like animal actors, some dogs love the performance. They love the attention. They can feel the energy in the crowd. It's like really, really fun for them. And some horses would rather not. And you would choose that horse carefully then, like,
Hmm.
because I can see you're not going to force a horse to do something he doesn't. He can learn the things, but he may not enjoy it near as much. I don't see you forcing a horse to ever be in a position where he's got to, perhaps perform in a sense if he doesn't want to. It's not you. You're not going to
Yeah,
do
I
that.
really like them to enjoy it. Like
Yeah, that's the whole point.
I
That's the
like a
whole point.
game. I like a horse that gets really animated and kind of, when I brought my horse out here, it's like the rearing and the bucking and the running. Like I like them to kind of play and be really animated
Yeah,
about
and
it.
be allowed to do that, and you're not riding them at that point, so the rearing and
No.
the bucking is at a safe distance, and it's not a dangerous defensive rearing and bucking. It's a, "I feel
No.
great about myself,"
Yeah, it's
play.
playing
Yeah,
for
it's play.
sure.
And then I wouldn't recommend everyone just run out and start playing with their horses without having
No.
some good boundaries so that you're safe. You can't have your horse running you over. They sometimes don't know, they can't see you, or they could run into you really easily or kick you, or, I mean, just not even on purpose, but you've got to be aware.
Yes,
So there has to
absolutely.
be some training involved. I'm not running to run out and,
Yeah. No, no,
and
I mean there's a whole
you're
process to
not
it.
chasing them. You're not chasing them with the whip in circles. You're not chasing them at all. You're encouraging, but you're not like snap, snap, chase, mean, none of that negative where they're going to be fearful. It's
No,
not like
I
that.
want it to more just get their attention.
Exactly.
So like I use a whip snap, and it's the sound. Like
The
that
sound, a
sound,
sound cue, naturally.
yes,
Like
is
sit, stay, good,
mhm,
it's no different.
exactly. And it's
And it's
just a
not anywhere
loud,
near
sharp
them.
attention getter.
Yeah, and
Like
it's not
that's
near them,
yes.
so.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's really cool. Now just horses in general are when you're working with them are there more things the same with horses as far as horses as a species? More things that are universal with horses when you're training versus things that each individual different horse. Like there's 70% horses are the same and then there's 30%, there's quirky behavior or does every horse work with these methods? It's just a matter of time.
So there's definitely different approaches. And some of them, we might have to go after if they're really shut down or really lack motivation and don't want connection. Sometimes we can, like I said, the food is a tool in the toolbox.
Mhm.
So some of them we do have to have a little bit different approach and have more kind of incentives and really baby them that way. Whereas some really just desire the connection. So similar to people, it's like sometimes we have introverts, we have extroverts. And so how we kind of deal with them, I would say most horses are kind of individuals. But there's definitely kind of a start or a basis that we get a gauge for the horse, and then how we respond to their enthusiasm to work with us is how we're going to kind of take that method.
Okay.
So yeah, it does depend on the horse quite a bit.
Okay. And speaking of clinics, next month you get to go to a pretty exciting festival clinic. Just tell us about what's going to happen. I wish I was in your shoes. It's pretty exciting.
Yes, so the Liberty Horse Festival is in Kentucky. I think it's Lexington. It's at the horse park. And so I know Warwick Schiller is going to be there. A couple other people I'm not as familiar with. Ben Atkinson is coming from the UK. I believe.
Okay, so
Um,
for those of us who don't know, please explain who Ben Atkinson. I've heard him on Work's podcast. He's amazing. Work Schiller is a horse trainer that we all follow, and is one of the voices that are really working on building attunement and connection. And he's got a great podcast, and so uh, I get to hear, learning a lot from him with his guests. And Ben Atkinson that you're referring to was one of his guests, and he's had an amazing career. And I would be thrilled just to be able to like sit in on that clinic and hear that. But please tell us about what you know about Ben and what the clinic's going to be like, you think.
Yes. So Ben has done a lot of kind of movie acting and film production with his horses. He kind of grew up doing that. That was his family thing, and now he's created a team of 16. I think they're all Iberian style horses
So
that he
Iberian
works
style
at.
horses
I
would
think they're
be
Andalusians.
mhm,
Don't quote me on that, but and he can work his entire team of 16 at Liberty.
16 horses at Liberty, all working together. Um,
It's
no conflict. They're just,
phenomenal.
and if you ever see him or look at his videos, they are enjoying their job.
Oh, they love it. I mean, he does a lot of I've seen a lot of his videos and stuff, and they'll be on huge, like not even arena size stuff, out on grass pastures, and they're so engaged with him in what they're doing, and they love their work. And so yeah, getting that many horses to work together and is quite phenomenal. And then he also does like Roman riding and trick riding, and then he
Okay,
Roman
Roman
rides at
riding is
Liberty. So that is where they're standing with one leg on two different horses. And so I've seen him do that, and he'll jump them. And his most recent kind of thing is now he had accomplished it at Liberty, and then he went back and started putting driving lines on them. So he's Roman riding two horses, but is controlling, I think, at least 8 with different sets of reins.
wow.
So yeah, it's quite. I mean, the partnership that he creates with horses is quite phenomenal. As far as expectation of what the clinic is going to be, I
Yeah.
have no idea. It'll be interesting. So he's not bringing any of his horses with him, and
Because they're in the UK, so it
yeah,
wouldn't be
the logistics to fly 16 horses
yeah,
is just kind of
and
insane.
quarantine and the whole thing.
So it'll be cool to see, kind of the logic behind that too, is how his methods, how horses who are not familiar with his methods will respond to his methods. Because he will be using Dan James's horses while he's here,
Okay.
and presenting at the Liberty Horse Festival as well.
Well, then these horses will be learning, so it'll be different than his own trained horses already. So then people can actually see. So you'll all learn from the clinic. You'll have to learn the methods. That's
Yes.
exciting. That's exciting. And the Liberty Horse Festival is um, just a bunch of different trainers coming together and like-minded people that are interested in these methods. And,
Yes.
okay.
And there's down there's the International Liberty Horse Association has their world championships as well.
Okay, so it's competition as well.
Yes, anyone can join the Liberty Horse Association. I mean, they have patterns posted on their website, and the classes start online. So it's like everything we do. You don't just take a horse and throw them out in the arena and hope they're going to come.
No.
Even the starting classes, it's like they have online, in hand classes down there, and so that's really cool that anyone can get involved at any level into
That's
the Liberty
really
stuff.
exciting. Wow, I just want to go so bad. Might have to take a trip down to Kentucky. I won't be bringing a horse, but I wonder if I get a press pass. So that's pretty exciting. Okay, I have to move this kitten so I can see my notes. I think I'll give Marigold to you. This is Iris, and that's Marigold. All right, so we're going to get to the point here where just a few more questions before we have what we call cookie break, and so we'll be talking about that. But what you talked a little bit about your dreams for the future, this therapeutic riding program. What has to happen for that to all come into place? What group of people do you think that you're going to be most comfortable serving? How does that come about?
I mean, I really don't know. And so I used to think that I really wanted to kind of focus on more like the disability as far as like Down syndrome and Williams syndrome kind of people. I had seen some phenomenal therapy centers really make huge changes in people who really struggled with that kind of stuff. But now that I've learned more about horses and how therapeutic they are, it definitely can cover a lot broader of a spectrum.
Certainly.
As far as like, especially rehab and addiction and stuff like that. I had sold a horse out in Colorado who went to a facility who even helped with eating disorders.
Hmm.
And, there's a lot of different things. As far as what capacity I will be involved, I'm not sure, but the opportunity will present itself at some point.
Well, the nice thing is that you can run a facility and you can hire really qualified,
Yes.
wonderful people who are use horses for therapy in different modalities, and these are all podcasts for the future because there's so many people doing such amazing work. But the bottom line is horses heal.
They do. And that is, definitely something that, and yeah, like you said, it's like, I kind of want to enable. I'm not going to be the one doing the therapy, but I would love to have the horses and provide the horses and the space and kind of enable the healing to happen.
Right, and you are in tune enough that you'll pick horses to do this program that it's okay for their mental health too. That the horse
Yes.
is happy in his work, not getting shut down, not being it's too much for me, whatever. Because horses are so in tune, but
Yes.
if they're able to stay regulated, it's going to help the person who may be dysregulated, who may be a lot of emotions, or especially when adverse childhood experiences and trauma, which comes out in so many different ways, and people with PTSD, and just there's so many ways to help. I'm sure you'll find your niche.
Yes. Well, and
And
a lot of it you said about, horses enjoying it. A lot of them actually are the horses at liberty. And so the horses have to choose whether or not they want to participate.
exactly, and that can be a real learning thing for like a young person who has a lot of anger, right? And he's just radiating the anger, and the horse will just go, well, okay, then I'll just stand over here until you're ready. And the
Hmm.
person has to go, why doesn't he want to come near me? Well, let's take a deep breath, let's figure that out. You know you need to regulate yourself too, so this horse can feel safe in your place, or things like that, where the horses are really excellent communicators if we're paying attention.
Yes. Totally. Yeah, yeah, I don't know how I will be involved or what has to happen. Right now I'm still trying to figure out the logistics of just keeping everything running. So,
Well, I believe
oh
that
yeah.
you have a gift and you're going to be able to continue to share it. I mean, just the little time I spent with you, I learned much more about myself than I did the horse. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? I learned what I was doing that was not communicating clearly.
Yes, and I see a lot of people too projecting on horses. And there's been times where I'll show up and the horse will have a whole bunch of problems. They do this, they pull, they rear,
Mhm,
and I'll walk in and see no problems whatsoever. And so a lot of times it's the projection of things onto that horse that
mhm.
kind of bring out a lot of bad behaviors.
Yeah, well, he's being stubborn. He's being dumb. He knows better. Blah blah blah.
And to fix that, you have to look at yourself, not them.
Yeah, yeah, kind of a reflection in some ways. So.
Yes.
All right, we're coming to the part of the show we call, cookie break or cake time or whatever it is we're doing. But look, I have this batch of, so they don't tip over, but chocolate chip cookies. Chocolate chip cookies are going to be really, really yummy. Made with real Wisconsin butter and eggs from my very own hen. So when I first started out in the photography business, I would say, I want to get a meeting with ad agency. And I'd say, I'll show you my book and show you the work, right? But the way I got in was I would either promise to bring homemade chocolate chip cookies or brownies. And I got every meeting I asked for because I would bring the yummy stuff. So
That's a
so
good
when we're done
tactic.
here, we can have some of these cookies. But it's cookie break, which
They
means
smell
it's
delicious.
yeah, cookie break means it's time for our questions. Well, no, we've been asking questions all along, but these are specific ones that I sent to you ahead of time.
Mhm.
And so I have to say that I borrowed this idea from Warwick Schiller's podcast, where he asks his guests in the end, he sends them a list of 20 questions, which he borrowed from Tim Ferriss, a book called The Tribe of Mentors. No, you can't have that. A book called The Tribe of Mentors. We may have to move cookies just briefly. So, okay, note to self, cats will get after the treat. Okay.
Or the coffee,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Okay. So we sent you a list of 20 questions ahead of time. We're just going to ask 5 of them, and you were able to pick them out. Okay.
Yes.
So the questions that you picked out was, one of them is, what has been your biggest failure and how has it helped you?
So I would say my biggest failure is not being an engineer. So I went and got my degree and didn't use it. So sometimes it feels like a waste of time, money, energy, whatever. Because I spent a lot of years kind of doing that, a lot of hours studying, and it doesn't really. I mean, engineering is a far cry from training horses. I mean, it's not like a business degree that I could have put into use. Petroleum is just how to extract things out of the ground, essentially.
Yeah.
But and how did it help me? I mean, the journey that getting that degree took me on led me to meet so many amazing people
There
who
you
have
go.
been such pivotal kind of turning points in my career or life or
Hmm.
healing process, and that's been quite amazing. Had I never gone out to school, I would have not met quite a few phenomenal people that have helped me along the way.
Exactly. So in the end, although I don't think I mean, in my mind, I'm like, wow, college degree in engineer is pretty impressive. And the skills you learned must apply somehow into the things you're doing now. Anyway, besides the relationships, which sound even more important.
Yes
But
and no, because I would argue, it's like a lot of what we're moving towards is being able to, kind of listen to your intuition and listen to your gut. And that's
engineering's not
opposite.
like that.
Engineering is very much like I'm going to work as an engineer. It's like we have everything planned out and methodical and not actually listening to ourselves or our intuition or to a higher power, whatever you want to call that kind of
Mhm. So a
sense.
big shift.
So, yeah, it's been quite a big
Maybe
shift.
it's good to have learned that young and not spent 40 years as an engineer, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Right. Okay. Uh, what accomplishment are you most proud of and why?
I would say that would have been my first world championship that you kind of touched on earlier. It actually stemmed off of my brother. We had a little bit of a disagreement, but he wanted a new horse because his wasn't good enough. And so, off of a dare, I got to use her and show her, train her, work with her for
This
a
is
year.
your brother's horse.
My brother's horse.
Okay.
And she was a Palomino. So I set my ambitions high and wanted to go to the Palomino World Show on a horse she was not built for it. She had a long back, she had a weak top line, weak hind end. She was not what you would call a phenomenal performance horse. And so it took that much more work to get her kind of
Hmm.
up to par. And I was, primarily on my own. We didn't take super regular lessons. It was maybe one here and there, but got her to competing on. I think we ended up on the national top 10 for several different classes, and then at the world show won 3 world championship titles off
Wow.
of a
Wow.
dare, that horse that
People
wasn't
have
good
to
enough.
understand how incredibly competitive a world show is. I mean, there'd be hundreds of people. How many would be in a class? It'd be what? How many would
It
be in a
wasn't
class?
that many because I
No,
was still in
not
the
in a class,
youth.
not 100
Oh,
in a class,
down there.
but I meant like, lots and lots and lots of horses. And
Oh
in your
yeah, there's
classes,
so many
even
people
though it was
going.
youth, there'd still be a large number.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember anymore because that was in 2012. So I don't remember how many people were really
But
in our
still, the
classes,
ring
but
was full and it was competitive because these are the top
yes.
in their game.
Yes.
So you took a horse that may not have been, the epitome of what all your competition was, but by just the training, the relationship, the hard work, you were able to
Yeah,
three
what
three.
dedication can really do, and
Yeah,
even in situations that aren't ideal. I
and the
didn't
horse
have
must.
a trainer and the perfect horse and nothing lined up. The cards were absolutely stacked against me.
I think you had the advantage of your horse wanting to be with you, though.
Yes.
She cared. She wanted. I mean, I remember the horse. She wanted to do this. Her heart was in it, and I
Yes.
think that shows.
We did have quite, and yeah, a lot of it was her try for me.
Yeah,
It wasn't
exactly. Her
that she
try.
had the ability
Right.
naturally, and so
Okay.
that was, definitely a life experience of, you'll kind of get out what you put into it, no matter what it
And the
is.
relationship was really important.
Yes.
Because it wasn't easy for her. I mean, she wasn't built as fluidly perhaps as some of these other horses, but because of her try, it came through. And so it's just the relationship is kind of what made you champions.
Yes. Yes.
That's
She
really,
was, yeah,
really
it was
cool.
phenomenal.
She was a beautiful horse. I remember her. What
She
was her
was
name?
Sandy.
That's right. I have photos of Sandy.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. In the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
So I would say kind of what we touched on just a second ago is following your intuition and listening to your body and finding, that and working through emotion and not hiding it. And so kind of living life a little bit more present and pursuing essentially a healthier version of yourself. And so that was, I definitely think there's been a shift more recently, in kind of society as a whole to start following that. I know, obviously Warwick Schiller in the horse industry
Hmm.
has done that, but there's a lot of right now a big shift to kind of move back to kind of our roots and kind of follow our truths and work through being
Wow.
in the present and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
If you had listened to Mary Corning or Carrie Lake is exactly then going. Mary Corning says back to the source,
Yes.
and Carrie Lake goes back to being present and feeling the energy of everything around us.
Yes. And
Um,
being in sync,
and
you know,
horses
with
bring
the
us back to
environment.
nature. Horses are connection to nature for us as human beings, and that's why
Yes.
we feel so good around them. It's very ancient.
Yes.
So that's cool. All right. What inspires you and motivates you to do what you do? What is your true purpose in this world?
I mean, watching other people find that connection with their horse. I mean, I absolutely love, you know, going to clinics and seeing people have breakthroughs and understand better, you know, their horse, increase their communication, their connection. All of that just brings me so much joy.
Oh,
So
boy.
that is, yeah, why I do what I do, and then I love the horse aspect to it. So I do still buy a couple horses every now and then to sell and going on the journeys. I like learning from horses. So every horse that I work with, I can learn a lot from. And so it's continuing my own education. And I mean, the thrill of the possibility of what's out there, there's just so much information. I don't know how you could ever not be learning.
Oh, exactly.
And I love that.
I can speak from personal experience because I was tempted to send Rita back to her breeder. I was feeling like I wasn't getting through. I was afraid of her. And because when she first came, she was really worried and would be defensive with her back end. Like you couldn't walk around her and we couldn't catch her for the first couple of weeks, although grain helped and we moved really slowly. And
Yep.
now she has too much draw, which is a good problem to have compared to what it was.
Hmm.
But I was still worried, like I'm just never going to be able to feel safe with her, and had a talk with her about it. I literally talked to
Yeah.
her about it. After the first time worked with you, I said, I am scared of you and I need to work on this, but this is how I'm feeling. And now when I'm with her, I think to myself, I'm just going to breathe and I'm going to be present. And like the more I let go of when I not hide the fear, not stuff it down, but the more I work through it because of the injuries from the other horse. So it's not
Hmm.
even this horse didn't do anything. Um, I have to tell myself she's not that horse and she's a different horse. And I'm going to not be foolish, but I'm also going to like let her know that it's okay. And I'm going to learn to trust you and you're going to learn to trust me. And even in just the 3-4 weeks that we've been, doing this, it's been an amazing bond that we built, even though all along I've always been able to, it was a breakthrough. Spending some time with you, learning to be more present and to work through the feelings I had about her really helped. So I am grateful. So
Yeah.
I want you all to know that you can go to Grace and Grit Horsemanship on Facebook and watch a lot of the videos and learn from Tiffany all for free. So that's pretty cool. And then she has the clinics, and we're going to talk her into doing a whole video series and creating a website and kind of getting out there in the world because Tiffany has a lot to share. So the last question. Oh, sorry, 2 more questions, quick. Uh, one more question. Sorry. What quality do you admire most in people?
Honesty, really. You know, even brutal honesty sometimes it might be hard to hear. But constructive criticism and people being honest with where they are, what they're working on, what they're going through, I think can help a lot. And then, you know, give honest feedback too. So that's, and I think we kind of are in a culture where a lot of things are not what they appear on the outside. And so someone who can be really genuine and not always just put on a really good show, but be
Mhm.
honest about all of the places. I think that's where we do most of our learning. If you know a lot of the people that have mentored me, it's like, well, if they would have come to me and been like, yeah, this is great, my life is awesome, I can't really learn or get from that. And then, you know, too, when they try to give me advice, I want honest, genuine feedback of the struggles and the hardships, and that really is what has helped me more than anything, is when people are very honest in every sense of the word.
All right, so that wraps up our questions, and we're almost to the end of our podcast. And I really enjoyed sitting here with you. Uh, well, where can folks find you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so right now I just have a Facebook page, and so I do have a YouTube channel as well.
Okay.
So that's, you can look up Grace and Grit Horsemanship on Facebook, and that is, I post some, you know, shorter videos every once in a while. I'll do like pointers and stuff like that, and then usually it's just kind of showing what I'm up to. But that's, if someone was interested in connecting, that's definitely probably the best way to connect, is sending me a message on Facebook.
Okay. Well, believe me, you're going to want to connect with Tiffany, especially if you want her. Whoa! If you want her to come and do a clinic at your location, you're gonna hear more from this young lady. Yeah, she's going to be a force in the horse world. I can tell you that right now. Thank you so much for listening to the Empathetic Trainer, and please join us again next time. Can you hear that purring?
I can.